Hello and welcome to a new guide for Deep Rock Galactic. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Leadstorm powered minigun. This is Gunner's starting primary weapon, and we're going to be going over all the pros, cons, and the ways that I like to build this weapon. So let's go over some of the reasons why you might want to take the Leadstorm powered minigun, and the pros and cons to taking this weapon. So the general pros of this weapon is that it does really high damage per second, which is fantastic. It has very long range, probably the most effective range, or at least the fastest to get out to long range out of any of Gunner's primary weapons. It has a lot of ammo, just like all the Gunner primary weapons. It's very good for single target damage, and it can be pretty decent against crowds too. All of those are fantastic reasons to take the minigun. Now, some cons of taking the minigun are that you do have a slow movement whenever you're using this. You have a slow movement with any of Gunner's primary weapons. There's also kind of a slow startup whenever you're trying to fire this, because it does need to spin up first and then you can start shooting. It's also less accurate when it starts shooting, but once it gets going, it becomes more accurate. And there is also the problem with the heat buildup. This weapon doesn't ever need to reload, but if it overheats, then that makes it so you can't use the weapon for a certain amount of time. This can both be a pro and a con, because there are a couple of options you can take later on in the build that really help out with the minigun, so overheating it isn't such a big deal, and certain overclocks actually encourage that. But so long as you're keeping somewhat of an eye on your heat gauge, you should be pretty good to go. For a general build without any overclocks for the minigun, I really like this build. This one is going with increased accuracy in tier 1. This makes it so you're more accurate at longer ranges and you're more accurate on the startup. I find that to be really useful, but increased rate of fire can also be really good in tier 1. In tier 2, I like to go for more damage over more ammo, although ammo is still good. Tier 3, all of them are really good. I like going with a blow through. You can potentially get more value towards crowds with this, but armor breaking is really good against bigger targets, and the stun can be pretty decent too if you like stunning enemies. In tier 4, I like going with a faster spin up. This just makes it so that you can start firing faster than you otherwise would, but all the other options in tier 4 are really good too. Just take whatever you'd like. Feel free to experiment with them. And then in tier 5, I like going with Cold as the Grave. This makes it so every time that I kill an enemy, it cools down my minigun. This is a pretty straightforward minigun build that can kind of deal with just about everything. It's really good against crowds, it's really good against single targets. It's my go-to general purpose minigun, and you don't need any overclocks for this. And this works really well even all the way into Haz 5, and probably on Haz 5 Plus. I haven't really taken a non-overclocked build into Haz 5 Plus, but I'm certain that this one would do extremely well. Now, which secondary should you pair your minigun with? Well, all the secondaries are pretty good. Since the Leadstorm powered minigun works kind of at every range and kind of does just about every job, really any of the secondaries are fine to be pairing with it. You start out with the Bulldog Heavy Revolver, which is a fantastic secondary weapon. It does really high damage, has very long range, and it has pretty fast follow-up shots. If you don't like that one, the BRT Burst Pistol is a pretty well-rounded gun in just about every aspect, where you get a lot of ammo, it's fairly accurate, it does good damage. It's not as specialized as the other two, but if you just want a general purpose secondary, that can be a pretty good option. And then there's also the Coil Gun, which is a pretty decent option. This is a single shot gun that can actually punch through walls and does really high damage, but you do need to reload it every single time. So it can take a little bit of time to reload this, but any of them work really well with the Leadstorm powered minigun. Let's move on to the overclocked builds and go over each of them really quick. So first up, we have a little more oomph. This is a clean overclock. This one gives you 1 more point of damage, as well as it gives you a faster spin up by 0.2 seconds. This is pretty nice, especially if you take the spin up in tier 4. That's probably my favorite way to build this. Outside of that, this is just a straight buff to the minigun, so if you want to build it any other way, if you find any build that works for you, go for it with a little more oomph. I'm going to be using the exact same build that I was just running. I find this one to work really well, although this one is a little bit better than the regular minigun because it has almost an instant startup. It's a 0.1 second startup, so you don't have to be stuck in place for very long waiting for your gun to spin up. It's a really strong and straightforward overclock. I think it's one of the better clean overclocks in the game. I really enjoy it. This pairs really well with any sort of secondary weapon, so whatever you want to take, you can absolutely do that. For me personally, I enjoy taking the composite casings overclock for the burst pistol. Another very straightforward overclock that just makes it so I have more damage on the burst pistol. There's no real downside to using this, and the minigun works incredibly well against just about everything. So the burst pistol is just a backup in this case. The second clean overclock is called Thin Drum Walls. Thin Drum Walls gives you 300 more maximum ammo, and it increases your cooling rate by 0.5. So you just get a straight upgrade to the minigun in this case too. This one, just like the other clean overclocks, can really be built however you'd like, so I tend to keep the same minigun build. That way I'm just not needing to switch between them. So, same one that I recommended before. I wouldn't really recommend as much for the fire options for this, with hot bullets or aggressive venting in tier 5. I think that those ones are better on some other overclocks. You could still make an argument for Thin Drum Walls and hot bullets working really well together, since you can just kind of feather the heat, make sure that it always stays in the yellow and you're not overheating your gun. that works perfectly fine. This one is just a straight upgrade to the minigun, giving you 300 more ammo and a slightly better cooling rate. So if you want to go cooling like my build here, then it makes it so you actually have a very consistent weapon that works really well against crowds. Still works really well against single targets, it's just not going to cool down as quick, but you do get extra bullets from it, so that's pretty nice. This one, you can also take whatever secondary you would like with it. There's no secondary in particular that actually helps with this. If you wanted to go with a secondary that loses out on ammo though, you could do that, at least if you're running an overclock like elephant rounds, that might be a decent option for this. In my case, I like pairing this with the burst pistol once again, and I like taking it with compact mags. That just makes it so I get more ammo overall, even though I have a slightly slower rate of fire and a slower reload speed. It is still a very good overclock that just gives you more control over this and makes it so your gun lasts even longer. Again, if you didn't want to go for that and you wanted to go for some more high damaging options, you could absolutely do that. Something like mole or lead spray could all be really valid options with this, since they get you so much more damage, and if you are feeling perfectly fine with the minigun's ammo, then those ones can definitely help in that role. Our next overclock is called Compact Feed Mechanism. This one is a balanced overclock. That makes it so you get 800 more total ammo, but you do lose out on 4 rate of fire. This one is a bit of an interesting trade-off here, but it can be decent. In Tier 1, I do like taking the extra rate of fire with this one, that way I can get back up to the normal rate of fire, and then I consider this just an ammo upgrade. You could go with all the ammo for this, and that can be kind of fun as well. I don't think it's really the best. I think damage is better in Tier 2. Tier 3, you pick whatever you'd like. Tier 4, you pick whatever you'd like. And then in Tier 5, you can also pick whatever you'd like. For me, I tend to run the same sort of build, so I'm going with damage, blow through, faster spin up, and cold as the grave. This one is an okay overclock that kind of deals with just about everything. More ammo is nice for the minigun. It makes it so you can kill enemies for a longer duration, and it makes it so the resupplies can go a little bit longer. I do find that the faster rate of fire to get back up to a normal rate of fire is pretty good with this one, and it will make it so your minigun's not as accurate as it would be with our other builds at longer ranges, but I think that's an okay trade-off for the most part. If you're built like this, again, the minigun is pretty flexible, so pick whatever secondary you would like. For me, I believe I was going to triple tech chambers for this, so I can get a little bit more damage on here. But if you thought you already had enough base ammo, you could kind of go with the previous options that I mentioned. Mole if you want higher damage, elephant rounds if you want high damage, or something like lead spray if you want high damage. All of those are really good on your secondary weapons too. And then just use the minigun for killing off everything else. Although the minigun isn't really lacking in killing big targets either. Next balanced overclock is called exhaust vectoring. And exhaust vectoring allows you to have more damage per shot, but it does make it so your gun is less accurate overall. You get 2 more damage, but 2.5 times extra base spread. One way that you can counteract this is just take the increased accuracy in Tier 1. That'll make it so your minigun is not as accurate as it otherwise would be if you took the accuracy, but it is way more accurate otherwise, and then you just get that 2 bonus damage. For this, I like building it slightly different, so I like going with the extra accuracy, more damage, blow through rounds, faster spin up, and then the fire bullets on this, so that you can potentially light enemies on fire once you get your heat gauge halfway up. This one I find to be pretty decent overall. It allows you to have a little bit more fire. You could still go with cold as the grave and go with our last build, and that would work perfectly fine too. This one is just generally a buff over the standard minigun, so it can work really well. This one also pairs really well with any sort of secondary weapon. You could go with something long range with this, something like the coil gun works really well. I took 6-shooter with mine. 6-shooter works fairly well at longer ranges and allows you to have fast follow-up shots at close range, which can be nice. It's just a good general purpose overclock for the revolver. Our next overclock is called Burning Hell. Burning Hell is a very fun overclock that allows you to have really high damage at kind of close range. This basically sets a short range flamethrower onto your minigun, but it does come with the downside of your gun overheating faster. That's not such a downside if you want to pair this with hot bullets or exhaust vectoring. Both are really good, and this is the way I like building mine. So in Tier 1, I'm going with better accuracy because I just prefer that one. Tier 2, more damage. Tier 3, blow through rounds. Tier 4, spin up, but a lot of these are interchangeable. Pick whichever ones you find the best. And then in Tier 5, just basically don't go with cold as the grave. Exhaust vectoring I find better on things like Hazard 5+, where you have extra enemies to where you can actually make pretty good use of it. Otherwise, hot bullets in Tier 5 is also really good. Exhaust vectoring encourages you to overheat your gun, and then this will deal damage to everything around you, burning everything and scaring away all the enemies. Can be really strong. Hot bullets will just get you more damage and more damage per second on your minigun, since you can reach the heat of that faster, so you can build up even more fire on enemies. Burning Hell will also deal fire damage to everything that's directly in front of the minigun. This is a 5-meter cone right in front of it, so just treat this as a short-range flamethrower, and it works really well. As a secondary weapon, I would highly recommend that you take volatile bullets on the revolver. Volatile bullets allows you to have really high damage, and the lead storm powered minigun with Burning Hell is a really good way to trigger this. So if you want to have that, I'd absolutely recommend it. If you're not such a big fan of the revolver, you can kind of go with whatever else you would like on the coil gun or the burst pistol, but I do think you're missing out if you're not running volatile bolts with this particular overclock. Then our last balanced overclock, which is our brand new overclock, is called Rotary Overdrive. Rotary Overdrive allows you to have various coolants on your weapon, and you can activate these by hitting your reload button, and this cools your gun down. This also gives you faster rate of fire for the minigun for some reason, which is really cool, and it also makes it so that your gun heats up faster, which is also really cool. This one is the brand new overclock that just came out for the minigun, and I think it's really strong currently. Like really strong at the moment, especially on the higher difficulties or modded difficulties where you have more bugs, because this will also allow you to cool down your minigun when you overheat it. So you can just keep firing it until it overheats, hit R, and then you'll be instantly reloaded back. That makes it so if you stack this with aggressive venting, it is incredibly strong. It can still be really strong with hot bullets too. This is the way I like building my minigun with Rotary Overdrive. So in tier 1 I'm going with better accuracy, but better rate of fire is also really fun. I'd recommend trying that out if you don't think the accuracy is all that necessary. Increased ammo in tier 2. I actually do find that sometimes I actually run out of bullets with this before I run out of the coolants, so more ammo makes it so I can overheat it more often, and I'm mostly using this for crowd control, so the ammo kind of makes sense for me, but if you like damage, go for that one. Blow through rounds in tier 3, but they're all great in tier 3. Tier 4, faster spin up, but all of them are great in tier 4, and then exhaust vectoring in tier 5, so I can keep overheating this and keep dealing fire damage to everything around me. If you want to take hot bullets, you can absolutely do that though, and if you are going to take hot bullets, I would probably recommend more damage in tier 2. That way you can just keep getting your heat built up and then just keep cooling it down manually, so you can constantly have fire bullets and get even more damage per second out of this. This is a really strong overclock and it pairs really well with any of the secondaries. You could once again pair this with volatile bullets. I think it works really well with that. But if you don't like taking that, then anything else with a revolver, coil gun, or burst pistol is a pretty decent option too. Then we move on to the unstable overclocks, where first up we have Bullet Hell. Bullet Hell is probably one of my all-time favorite overclocks, or one of my most favorite overclocks. This one makes it so that you have bouncy bullets with a minigun. So your minigun loses 3 points of damage, which is a pretty big nerf to the damage of the minigun. You are also 6 times less accurate than you otherwise would be. But this makes it so there is a 75% chance whenever your bullets hit any sort of surface, this also counts for hitting bugs with it, then they can bounce into other nearby enemies. This one can be very strong against crowds. It's not very good against big single targets though. That's its main downside. Bullet Hell I like to build like this, so increased accuracy in tier 1. That makes it so I can use the Bullet Hell at kind of longer ranges, where at close range, this one can work really well. Long range, at least by itself, not so much, but with this it allows me to do that. Tier 2 I like going with more damage. This will just make it so I can two-shot the little swarmers, which is good because otherwise that can be a little bit annoying having to use 3 bullets on a swarmer. In tier 3 I like going with the blow-through rounds once again, but stun is really good in tier 3 too if you want that. That one is actually really useful for stun locking enemies so that your team can clean them up. It's really good. Tier 4, faster spin up so I can get to shooting this faster, and then tier 5, hot bullets so that I can light things on fire and get a little bit more damage out of this. This one is super fun on any sort of crowd mission. Not very good against dreadnoughts though. I wouldn't really recommend this on a dreadnought mission. This one just doesn't do that much damage. For a secondary weapon, I love taking magic bullets with this, and then you just have the no aim build, which is pretty fun to do. It's not really the best. I would probably recommend something with high single target damage, so go with something like elephant rounds or go with mole. I think those are better options, but magic bullets is just super fun and even more crowd control, so that's why I like taking it. And then our final minigun overclock is the Lead Storm for the Lead Storm. So Lead Storm gives you 4 more damage per shot. However, it makes it so that you can't move, sort of. We've talked about this before. You can still bunny hop, and anything that forces you to move, you can still move. So if you're standing on Doretta, or you're standing on a zip line, or I guess attached to a zip line, or standing on Molly, I guess, you can still move then, and if you stop firing this and kind of bunny hop away, you'll still keep the momentum that you're going, so usually you want to be shooting this and then stopping and hopping, and that makes it so you actually have a lot of mobility with the minigun. This does also make it so you basically have no stun chance though, and no stun duration with the minigun too. That's not such a big deal. The increase in damage is the best part about this, and for this I like building it for all damage. So in tier 1 I'm going to better accuracy, tier 2 more damage, tier 3 armor breaking, although blow through rounds is really good with this too. Tier 4 more damage on top of that once we're at our top rate of fire, and then Cold as the Grave in tier 5. This one can be really good, especially if you're allowed to just sit in place and deal really high damage. It can melt dreadnoughts really fast. It's one of Gunner's fastest DPS weapons, or best DPS weapons in the game. It is pretty nice. It does take a little bit getting used to because you have to adapt your style and you kind of have to bunny hop with this. For a secondary weapon, I'd recommend anything that gives you more AoE though. Since this one is more for single target damage, you're probably going to be having to use your secondary to run around with, so anything that deals more AoE damage, like magic bullets for the revolver, electro minelets for the burst pistol, which is the one that I took, or something like hellfire for the coil gun, can all be really good options with this. Overall, the Leadstorm powered minigun I think is a very solid weapon. It's a very good starter's weapon for Deep Rock. It does pretty much every job quite well, so long as you get used to the heat gauge and kind of the quirkiness of the weapon, but if you've played other miniguns in other games, you're probably going to get used to it pretty fast, and it has a pretty wide variety of overclocks that are both fun and very strong. Doesn't really have any terrible overclocks. I would say something like the compact feed mechanism is maybe the weakest of the overclocks, but even then, that's still free ammo if you go with the rate of fire in Tier 1, so that one's still not terrible. Tell me your thoughts on the Leadstorm powered minigun and its overclocks, as well as the builds you like to run with them. Tell me what weapon you'd like to see next. We're probably going to be doing this with all the weapons in Deep Rock, or at least all of the primary weapons, since they all got new overclocks. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.